You feel it before you understand it. That tightening in your chest when someone looks at you a second too long. That spike in your mind when a word lands wrong. That quiet shift in your mood when the world touches you without permission. You've carried this longer than you admit. Most people live like open wounds. Everything affects them. A tone, a glance, a comment, a memory. They call it being human. But there's another way to live, one that was never meant for the soft, the loud, or the desperate. This is not about becoming numb. It's about becoming untouchable. Machiavelli knew something the modern world forgot. The person who cannot be shaken cannot be controlled. And control is the real battlefield. Not money, not status, not love. Control of your inner state. Because the moment something affects you, it owns you. Watch closely. The insult that ruins your day. The rejection that replays in your head. The disrespect you keep reliving at night. None of these things are powerful on their own. They only become powerful when they enter you and rearrange your inner order. That's the theft no one warns you about. You're not imagining this. You've felt how quickly power leaks when emotion takes over. How your posture changes. How your voice tightens. How your decisions shrink. And you were never taught how to stop it. The first Machiavellian principle is brutal but clean. Nothing has meaning until you assign it meaning. Pain included, disrespect included, loss included. The world throws noise at everyone, but only the untrained let it inside. This is the moment your life begins to make sense. Because once you understand that being affected is a choice, not a reflex, you stop begging the world to be gentle. You become something the world has to adjust to. And that's when the balance starts to shift. Look back at the moments that still haunt you. Not the events, the reactions, the way you froze, the way you over-explained, the way you felt small and tried to prove you weren't. You survived things you still don't have words for. Machiavelli would call this your conditioning. You were trained slowly to react, to justify, to seek approval when challenged, to explain yourself when accused. That training made you predictable. And predictability is the entry point for control. Here's the forbidden truth. People don't attack what they fear. They attack what they think will react. Every provocation is a test. Every disrespect is a probe. They are checking how much access they have to your inner world. When you react, you answer the test. And the answer is always the same. I can be moved. The second principle is silence, but not the weak kind. Not avoidance, not suppression. Strategic silence, the kind that starves the attack of oxygen. You don't correct, you don't clarify, you don't rush to be understood. Because clarity is not power. Control is. When you remain still while others push, something unsettling happens. The pressure reverses. They begin to feel exposed. They start filling the space with nervous words, justifications, anger. You say nothing, and suddenly they are the ones affected. This is not cruelty, it's geometry. Emotional force collapses when it meets no surface to land on. It's okay to feel this realization land heavy. You were taught the opposite your entire life. That good people explain, that innocence must be proven, that silence means guilt. Machiavelli knew better. He who explains submits. He who remains composed forces the world to explain itself. The third principle is where the shift begins. And it's uncomfortable because it kills an old identity. You stop needing to be seen as good. Read that again. Most of what affects you comes from one hunger, to be perceived correctly, to be understood, to be validated as fair, kind, justified. That hunger is a leash. The moment you need others to see you a certain way, they own your nervous system. They can pull you into reaction with a single word. Machiavelli would never play that game. He understood that reputation is not defended. It is curated through behavior. And behavior under pressure tells the only story that matters. When someone misjudges you and you rush to fix it, you tell the room their judgment matters more than your composure. But when you let misunderstanding exist without flinching, you gain something rare. Mystery. Mystery makes people cautious. Cautious people hesitate. And hesitation is power. You're not broken. You were never taught another way. This is where awareness becomes a weapon. You start noticing the exact moment you're about to react. The breath change, the inner heat, the urge to respond. And instead of obeying it, you pause. Just one beat longer than feels natural. That pause is the fracture point. That's where the old you would have collapsed into explanation, and where the new you begins to harden into presence. You don't suppress emotion, you outgrow its authority, and the world starts to feel quieter. Now comes the hidden threat, the one no one talks about. When you stop being affected, some people will escalate. They push harder, they provoke louder, they dramatize. Because predators panic when prey stops reacting like prey. This is where most people relapse. They mistake escalation for danger. It's not. It's exposure. The fourth principle is non-attachment to outcome. You no longer need to win the exchange, correct the record, or dominate the moment. You let the other person reveal themselves fully. Emotion always overplays when it isn't mirrored. They raise their voice. You lower yours. They insult. You observe. They demand a reaction. You deny them access. And slowly the power dynamic flips. The room stops watching you. They start watching them. Because calm under pressure reads as authority at a primal level. Not loudness, not aggression. Calm. Every predator has a predator. And emotional people can sense when they've miscalculated. You're allowed to want more than survival, more than coping, more than being strong enough. You're allowed to be unaffected. Not because nothing hurts, but because nothing owns you anymore. And once you cross this line, there is no going back. Because you've tasted what it feels like to remain intact while others unravel. That's the danger. That's the shift. The fifth principle is the revelation most people resist because it asks you to give up a drug you've been addicted to since childhood. Validation. Every time you seek it, something affects you. Every time you lose it, something controls you. Machiavelli would strip this illusion clean. The world never validates strength. It tests it. And tests only matter if you care about the grade. Here is the quiet inversion. When you stop asking to be understood, people start listening harder. When you stop defending your image stabilizes. When you stop reacting to judgment, judgment loses leverage. You feel it now. The pull to explain easing. The heat that used to rise has nowhere to hook. This is the moment your inner weather changes. If this lands, sit with it. Notice how often you've handed your piece to someone who didn't even know your name. Notice how often you've rehearsed conversations that never happen. That was validation, running the show. It's okay to feel this. Now consider this. If nothing affects you, nothing can be used against you. Accusations starve. Insults evaporate. Praise loses its narcotic edge. You become steady, not because you're numb, but because you're sovereign. Pause here. Ask yourself, quietly, what would change if you no longer needed the world to agree with you to move forward? Let that question sit. If it opens something, you know what to do with it. Small moments are where this discipline is forged. A comment slides past. You don't chase it. A message goes unanswered. You don't fill the silence. A look lingers. You don't flinch. Each time you choose containment over release. You survive things you still don't have words for, which is why your nervous system learned to scan for threat everywhere. But here's the recalibration. Not every stimulus deserves a response. Most are bait. Some are mirrors. Few are real. When you stop reacting, you start noticing patterns. Who pushes when ignored? Who softens when you stay calm? Who disappears when they can't move you? This is data. Machiavelli prized data over emotion. Emotion is expensive. Data compounds. You begin to feel the difference in your body. Shoulders drop, breath deepens, your voice slows. People adjust without knowing why. The room listens differently. You're not broken. You were never taught another way. The micro shift is this. You don't deny feeling, you delay response. That delay is your edge. It turns impulse into intention, and intention builds aura. You walk into a room, you feel the air before you hear the words. You notice the glance that wants a reaction. You don't give it. Your feet are planted, your jaw is loose, your eyes are steady. You let the moment breathe. Someone speaks sharper than necessary. You let it pass through, not into you. You feel the old reflex flicker and then fade. You reply, if at all, with fewer words than expected. Or you don't reply. Both are choices now, both are controlled. You notice something else. The room recalibrates. People mirror your tempo. The loud soften. The insecure overperform. The confident wait. You're not imagining this. This is presence, not dominance, not intimidation. Presence, the quiet authority of someone who doesn't need to be moved to move others. You've carried this longer than you admit, the sense that you were meant to stand here, not scramble there. The sense that your power was never about force, but about refusal. Refusal to be pulled. Here's the unfinished thread, the one that keeps tugging. If nothing affects you, some will try harder. They'll escalate stories. They'll test boundaries. They'll perform. Let them. The discipline isn't to confront every wave. It's to choose the shoreline. You don't need to correct every lie. Time corrects what calm outlives. You don't need to win every exchange. Position wins wars. Machiavelli's cold gift is this. When you remain unaffected, others begin negotiating with themselves. They reveal motives. They expose fears. They hand you leverage without asking. Awareness becomes a weapon, but not yet complete. There's a deeper layer, one that turns immunity into influence, one that lets you shape outcomes without touching them. You can feel it approaching. The silence is thicker now. The distance is working. Hold it. The rhythm breaks here. Up until now, you've learned how to stay untouched, how to let things pass through without leaving residue. But there's a silence deeper than calm, one that unsettles people who depend on reaction. You feel it when you stop explaining and the room gets awkward, when you don't respond and the other person keeps talking, when your stillness stretches time. This is not peace, this is pressure. Most people think pressure comes from force. Machiavelli knew better. Pressure comes from withholding resolution. You don't close the loop, you don't satisfy the tension, you let it hang. And something strange happens. Those who came to dominate you begin negotiating with the void. They fill it with guesses, with fear, with overreach. They expose themselves trying to regain balance. You're not doing anything to them. You're simply not helping them feel comfortable. This is the rising edge, the moment where immunity turns into gravity. Now the final principle slides in quietly, almost unnoticed. You stop living in reaction and start living in definition. You define your pace. You define your access. You define what deserves your attention. And others adapt. You don't announce boundaries. You embody them. You don't warn. You don't threaten. You don't explain consequences. You let patterns do the teaching. People who drain you lose access. People who test you meet stillness. People who respect you feel your warmth return. This is how influence works without effort. You're not managing people. You're managing availability. And scarcity reshapes behavior faster than force ever could. If this resonates, let it settle. Let it change how you move tomorrow. You don't need to tell anyone. You don't need to convince anyone. You simply live it. Those who feel it will adjust. Those who don't will fall away. Either way, nothing touches you. You don't need to harden your heart. You just need to stop handing it out. Because the most dangerous person in the room is not the loudest, the angriest, or the most feared. It's the one who can feel everything and still choose not to be moved.